Hi folks, Tactard Ted, 29th day of April 2022. So let's talk about money and lies. Yes, money and lies. Money makes the world go around, don't you know? And you know where most of your money is going? Well, we just hit another 33 billion with a B dollars to Ukraine. Yes, my favorite place on the whole planet, the most corrupt dumpster fire in Europe, Ukraine. And why do we want to send $33 billion to Ukraine? Well, we want to send $33 billion to Ukraine to help fuel the war in Ukraine. Oh yes, we have to put in more weapon systems. We have to put in more javelins. We need to put in tons and tons of stuff that the Ukrainians need to defend themselves. There's only one problem, folks, and I've said it before. Unless there is an outside force that enters on the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainians are done. And I'm not advocating for an outside source. When there is such a level of corruption, such a level of just flat out crimes against humanity inside their own country and the way they treat their own people, I don't think they need the help of more troops. I don't think they need the weapons. The interesting thing with all the weapons we're sending and all the money and all this nice stuff we're doing for them is that a large percentage is not making it to the soldiers in the field. A large percentage is being destroyed in warehouses by Russian cruise missile attacks. Russian cruise missile attacks, folks. You know, the Russians, they have cruise missiles. Those cruise missiles fly over top of your army, over top of everything, and land where you want them. And they hit and blow things up. And the cool thing about blowing weapons up is you only got to hit a little bit of a weapon and it blows up and blows up the weapon next to it. And before you know it, you have a big fire and a big explosion. And they've been blowing up military storehouses and warehouses at fairly regular intervals. The most interesting thing about these warehouses that are blowing up is they're full. They're not empty. They're not partially empty. Apparently the Russians have really good intelligence that is telling them when weapons deliveries are being made. And pretty neat that you're able to go ahead and figure out where the weapons are. Plus, the Russians seem to be capturing the anti-tank weapons that NATO allies are sending to their partner, Ukraine. They seem to be capturing a shit ton of these things, and they're not cheap. They're not cheap, just like the man pads, the Stingers they're capturing. Those things are about $200,000 to $250,000 a piece. And when you see 10 or 20 of them in a pile, as the Russians are showing pictures of what they're capturing, you seem to realize that, you know, there's $2 million right there in 10 of these things. Actually, 2.5 million. That's $2.5 million of our aid that's laying on the ground that are now in the hands of the Russians. And if you were to believe the reports, the Russians are using these things to shoot down Ukrainian aircraft. So that's interesting. We're inadvertently causing. I've been a long time proponent of the fact, since the Ukrainians are not going to be physically able to win this war, the only thing we're doing is we're depleting stocks of old and outdated weapons. And, you know, Noam Chomsky said it, we're going to fight to the last Ukrainian. That's how we are going to go. We're willing to fight to the very last Ukrainian to do some sort of damage to the Russian Federation. So when you get down to it, what the weapons are doing is they are speeding the demise of Ukraine, or at least of Ukrainian civilians. Civilians who wouldn't, if the war ended today and stopped, there would be very few civilians die from violent acts over the next week. But that's not going to be the case, because the war is going to continue, because the Ukrainians, number one, believe the propaganda that is coming out of Washington and coming out of Kiev, that somehow they are going to prevail. This is not a Marvel comic book. I don't know how many times I need to keep telling you folks that. It has come down to numerical numbers and tactics. And the Russians, who went in with this bullshit idea, they copied the American idea that we are going to go in with one hand wrapped around our testicles. That's what they believed. They believed they could go in with one hand wrapped around their testicles and prevail. And they found out that's going to be a long, hard road, so they've switched up their tactics to tactics they are more comfortable with. Pound the living daylights with your artillery and your Air Force, move in, roll over, and mop up what's left. And that's traditional warfare in a European setting. This isn't the guerrilla nonsense. This isn't fighting a bunch of farmers with AKs who have international law on their side or your own press on their side. This is war, like World War II. It's bloody, it's nasty, and it's unforgiving. Very unforgiving. So we are sending $33 billion in addition to the other billions we've spent to Ukraine. That's going to end up getting civilians killed. And, we're worried about the Ukrainian people. We're worried about the Ukraine. Listen, if we're worried about the Ukrainian people, humanitarian aid and white flags, that should be the only things that we're sending them. And if we need to, give them instructions on the white flags. This could be over. Scott Ritter said it the best the other day. This could be over. Very simply. All Joe Biden has to do is call Zelensky and say, hey, dude, this ends. Cut it out. Knock it off. Find peace. And then he calls Putin. Hey, Putin, I told him to knock it off, dude. Take care of it. What is it now? Once we get all your situation settled and you've met your aims, you and I are going to sit down so you're no longer holding a pistol at my fucking head. And that's the truth. And I know that sounds pretty one-sided and pretty aggressive against Putin, but I'll be honest. Putin will tell you what he wants. Putin's not deceitful. He'll tell you what he wants. He's been telling us the whole time what he wanted in Ukraine. We didn't want to hear it. We didn't want to negotiate. Now, we want it to stop. But we keep pouring money in. We don't want it to stop. We're going to continue. As long as we keep propping up Zelensky, this keeps going on. This keeps going on until they run out of Ukrainians, because it doesn't look like we're prepared to let them run out of weapons. The other thing about this that people don't really seem to understand is logistics. And I harp about logistics, and people don't understand the importance of logistics. Amateurs talk tactics. Anybody can talk tactics. Tactics are simple compared to logistics, especially global logistics. Just because I'm going to send you some doesn't mean you're going to get it in a timely manner. It also doesn't necessarily mean that it's been properly maintained or in working order when you get it there. This seems to be a problem with a lot of the aid that some other NATO allies are sending. I know that a lot of the new generation Panzerfaust, which is a tank fist, it's an anti-tank weapon, that the Germans are sending to Ukraine. A lot of them are outdated models that were taken out of service in 2016. And so these things have been sitting in a warehouse, unmaintained, allowed to degrade, no new batteries. And a lot of them ain't working. A lot of them don't function because they've been taken out of inventory. I don't know. Reports coming back from a lot of folks say that a lot of the in-laws or javelins were sending, the batteries have degraded and they don't function. And of course, the Russians, being inventive and ingenious people who have ingenuity, they figured out a way to bypass the battery and use a conventional commercial battery, or to bypass that and make the damn thing work, and are supposedly employing those. It's what the Russians claim. I can't tell you if it's true. Don't know. So, also with logistics, I'm going to send 50 pieces of heavy artillery there. Well, you got to figure out how you're going to get them there. First of all, you're going to have to pull them out of storage. You're going to have to make sure they're lubricated, that they're properly going to function if you care. Then you're going to have to transport them to either a shipping hub, or you're going to have to put them on aircraft like a C-5A. You're going to have to fly them to Poland. You're going to have to unload them. You're going to have to go through all the documentation, because it's got to be dress right dress, folks, don't you know? And then you've got to get these weapons across the border into Ukraine. Now, this is where the fun starts, folks, because you need to think logistically. And unfortunately for the Ukrainians, the Russians are thinking logistically. They have taken steps in the last week to disable the railways in the western part of Ukraine, in and around Lviv, however you want to fucking say it. Most of the railways in Ukraine are electrified rail. In other words, they have trains that run off high voltage current. And once you disrupt that current, you got rails there, but you don't have anything to run on it. I'm almost surprised that Europe hasn't tried to give them diesel locomotives, although Ukraine is suffering a fuel shortage. The city of Odessa, which Odessa is not surrounded, Odessa is not being moved on by Russian Federation troops, has almost no fuel for civilian consumption. They don't have any for civilian consumption because the military is using it all. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to understand where that fuel is going. So they're already starving their civilian population for fuel because they are taking that fuel and they are giving it to their military. You add diesel locomotives, bringing in tanks, artillery pieces, war material. That's going to be even more strain on that. There are videos out there showing these long trains of oil, and how it has to be refined because Ukrainians have suddenly ran out of refineries due to cruise missiles and bombing. So they're up against it tight, logistically. And then you start going by the numbers they're losing. Also, you need to understand that there is a serious problem with OPSEC, operational security. One of the regional town governors fled his office. In his office was a list of every foreign fighter in his region, by country, by name, laid out. Slovakia, fighters from Germany, fighters from UK, fighters from Canada, fighters from the USA. Yeah, they had their names, man. I could look them up on Facebook if I was really interested, but I won't. Not interested. I don't want to see pictures of people who made a rash decision that's probably not going to end well for them. I'm not interested. Don't want to see. I'm not into death porn. But we're sending money like it's nothing. We're watching all these other things lead to us that's letting us know, they're coming to us that predicting doom and gloom in our own future. Yet we're sending money overseas like it's nothing. And it really bothers me that we seem to think that we can do that. Anyhow, folks, this has went longer than I anticipated, so I'm going to take a break. There'll be a part 2 to this video, and we'll go from there. So you guys take care. Bye.